Okay, testing 1, 2. Sorry about that, everyone.
Are we back?
We'll just get confirmation from our mods that we're back, and
Somebody tell us if they can hear us out there waiting for the live stream.
Is that right?
We are live, apparently.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So a little bit of difficulty with the microphone. So we'll start over. Hello, I'm Dominic Morrow, and welcome to another Materials Tech Talk here at Kitronik.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Emma. I am a graphic designer here at Kitronik.
So today we're going to talk about laserable plywoods. And what I was saying when you couldn't hear me was that when I go out and repair lasers, what often happens is my customers tell me they're using laserply, which I assume has come from the laser tree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, laserable plywoods are made out of a lot of different types of wood. And today we're going to sort of explore which of those plywoods are available at Kitronik, how it's made, some of the pros and cons, and what sort of results you can get with plywood. Exactly. So if I just look at my running order.
Yeah.
So the most common types of plywood that we sell at Kitronik are a birch plywood, poplar plywood, and a cedar plywood. And they all come from those particular type of trees.
Yeah.
I should note here at the top of our live stream that there are some difficulties sourcing birch plywood currently due to embargoes on imports from Russia and Belarus, where most of Baltic birch comes from. So there are limited availabilities in that for very good reasons at the moment.
But we do still have plenty of poplar.
Plenty of poplar. I mean, there's still some birches available. Certainly some of the higher quality, the higher grade birches.
Yeah. I don't think it's available on the website. So maybe we'll show us temporarily unavailable until we can sell it again.
So one thing I want to start by getting into is the idea of like the difference between a wood, a plywood, and a veneer coated or a veneer covered MDF or plywood. Yeah. So in my hands here I have a piece of very nice maple veneer, and if the camera and lighting was a little bit clearer, you might be able to see the nice grain on that. But as you can see, it's a very, very flexible, very thin piece of wood veneer. And when we add that to the front of a piece of MDF or fiberboard, we get something that looks as if it's wood all the way through. But really what we're seeing here is a piece of MDF with a piece of veneer adhered perfectly to its surface. And in the case of this particular piece, you can actually see on the back where there's some damage. We took this one from the damage pile. You can see the MDF and the veneer in the layers there. So we're not talking about that today, other than to point out that this is not plywood.
Yes. Yeah.
What we're talking about today is a wood that is made from layers of the same material. So here I have a piece of 4mm thick poplar plywood, one of our best-selling plywoods, and currently one of the only widely available plies that we have. And how this is made is by taking a piece of poplar wood stripped thin into a layer and then laying that on top of another piece where the grain runs in the opposite direction to the top sheet, and then taking a final sheet, laying that on the back with the grain running in the opposite layer to the middle sheet.
Precisely. Yes. And is it a good time to bring up the fact that the types of wood that are used could be graded differently, or is that?
Let's talk about grading.
Sure, perfect. I love plywood grading.
I think it's your topic. We have a blog post on plywood grading.
Yeah, we sure do.
I shall find the appropriate examples as you talk about them.
Would you like the demonstration camera?
Yes, please.
Perfect. So we have some examples. You can actually see the grain in the
Yeah, this was the wood veneer that I held up earlier, and
Yeah.
as you can see, you know, they've chosen for the veneer something with an interesting graining to it, a minimal knotting, or there is some knotting, and just to show how flexible that is. And on the back, it's just I think that's adhesive layer, or maybe a backing,
backing
paper of some sort.
Exactly. So,
but if I grab I think this is the BR grade.
Yes. So we have a blog on this, which we will mention later, show you where to find it. But plywoods are all graded differently based on appearance. And oftentimes some of the defects that you will see in the lower grades will be covered up with the veneers that we've just mentioned.
Well, I can grab a piece of birch ply that I found in our warehouse that has examples of the sort of patching that occurs on the lower grade facing of a plywood. So it's not that easy to see because, there we go, I've managed to get it into the light. And you can see here there's a sort of a duck foot shaped patch. And what this is where there's been a knot in the wood. They use a special tool to remove that section in that specific shape, and they'll cut that same shape out of a bit of scrap that has plenty of good pieces on it. In fact, that's actually a higher grade there than the rest of the sheet, and use it to patch that up. So that's what a patching.
Do you have the glued one as well?
I do.
It's sort of not glued, is it filled?
I think it's filler.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, I said I have it, and
Is this one?
It is that one. Thank you. Yeah. So let's get this one in shot. So this is actually our oak veneered ply. So it has the backing for the oak veneer, which I'll show you the front, which
it's very pretty.
That classic sort of golden oak look, and then on the back bow, which is not intended for show, and that's the whole point. This is just a piece of wood to mount the veneer on.
Yeah, exactly.
We can see here where there's been a crack in the wood and they've used a filler. Just like, well, I'm not going to say like polyfiller because that's a brand. And I'm sure it's not polyfiller. I'm sure it's just special plywood filler. But they've used a filler to fill that gap. Yeah. And we can also see on this sheet a couple of the sort of the pinhole knots you might get on the lower grades.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they're not obstructive really. It's just visually. You'll see when we run through the grades that they'll gradually more visually disruptive the defects will be. So we can start out with the highest grade. It's AB, which doesn't have any or very few variations in appearance or color, and the only thing that is allowed is the small pin knots, like you can see right up at the top here.
If anything, I mean, they add to the effect, don't they? But I mean, that's just me being kind of wooden about it, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, visually very, very appealing. So the next one down is a B grade, which shows the natural look of the wood a bit more. Changes in color, which show the grain pattern a bit more. Like you can see here, you can see the grain pattern of the wood a little bit more.
It's a very minor difference. And from sheet to sheet, the variance can be. You might get a sheet that's B grade, and you go, well, it's really on the borderline between being the highest quality and the next one down.
Yeah.
And that's typically going to happen.
This is the sort of grade that you'll would be applicable for painting, staining, or lacquered finishes and stuff like that. It will be free of open knots and plugs, so there'll be none of that duck foot, the strange duck foot plug shape
I'm going to show a piece of birch ply that we laser engraved before we were going to do this live stream last month or the month before, I forget, and we prepared these examples. And so this one actually has quite a nice example of the sorts of issue that can occur when you have knotting in wood.
Exactly, yeah.
So where we've been, I wonder if I can bring this up and focus it better. With today's technical difficulties, probably not. But talking of knots, that's where the laser beam has essentially hit a knot as it's cutting through the material, and it's just created a lot more sort of staining and marking on the cut.
Yeah, because it's had to...
It always had to punch through a tougher piece of material.
Yeah. So that is a good example of knots there
that you would get on a B grade.
Yeah.
But and it should be bore in mind, of course, that the middle layer of any ply is not graded. When we're talking about grading, we're talking about the face.
Exactly.
Or the non-work face. Or so you know, if we go back to the main camera a second, and I'll hold up I've got a piece of Seba ply here. So if we're talking about something like this very thin Seba ply, obviously we have a face and then we have the back, and the face side can be a different grade to the back side. The idea being that, you know, if you're working on a project where the quality of the wood's very important, then you might want to show face and then a side that's not showing in your project.
Yeah.
Or if you're looking for something that's essentially show on both sides, then you're looking for higher grade on both sides.
Yeah, precisely.
Is it worth showing the Seba ply here? And obviously you can see here that there's this
grade is this.
I'm not sure it says the grade on the label that we have.
Oh well. That's fine. It looks fairly free of But
you see this different coloration here, so this would be a typical type of B grading where you know you've not got that thing, and it's still a property of wood, obviously, to be that way. And then as I look at the front, it's much more even, though as I look at it very closely, I can still see the graining and the patterning from the natural tree.
Yeah.
I want to talk just for a little bit, if I may,
of course.
about the difference of cutting and engraving.
Oh,
and so if we can switch back to the desk camera, Emma.
Absolutely.
So this is a piece of Seba ply like the piece I was holding up earlier.
Yeah.
And I just want to put it next to a piece of birch ply. So you can see the difference. This is with exactly, or more or less the same settings, doing the same operation, both a cut and a scan or engraving on these plies. And you can see that as the top layer of the Seba plywood is removed through the engraving process, that we're seeing a much darker substrate inside that Seba ply than we get with this birch, which I'm pretty sure is all the way through the face layer of the birch. But you can see it's a much lighter wood through. So you know they're different woods. That's really what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then this is the much thinner 0.8 millimeter birch ply, and again, you know, we're seeing a different set of properties to the engraving from the laser cutter. So different woods achieve different effects.
Precisely.
Okay, let's have a look.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the
Seba.
The Seba, just the nice contrast that the bone creates there is.
It is contrasty, isn't it?
It's very nice.
And obviously, the deeper the engraving, the more contrast you like to get. Another factor that's going to affect the appearance of your engraving is your resolution or scan gap. So that's how many passes the laser head takes as it's working on the material. Should we pop that little video up?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when I'm talking about engraving, the examples that are shown where we have the head of the laser moving side to side and removing material from the surface of removing material from the surface of the material. I don't want to say material.
It's fine.
And obviously, as that material's being removed through the engraving process, it has to go somewhere. So you're going to get some staining. So if your laser cutter has an extraction system that's drawing the smoke and fumes and what have you away from your workpiece, say in the case of this machine, I think it's towards the back, there's barely any smoke to see in this particular operation. It's going to cause you some hazing and staining, which I'll show in a bit more detail once that video is finished.
It can leave sort of a yellowish or perhaps grey or brown sort of staining that does tend to fall into the grain.
Well, some people really like that.
Yeah.
Personally, I like my laser cut things to look finished. But, if you're kind of wanting that sort of very laser cut look, that's what causes it. It's that the vaporized material turning into a gas. It's obviously full of wood particles, essentially carbon particles, I suppose, I'm not correct. Causing a stain on the material. Which brings me nicely to talking about safety.
Yes, that is.
It's an important topic.
Yes.
So the temptation to grab some ply that you found in a skip or a bin or at the side of the road and pop that in your laser cutter is probably, if you're trying to be economical, it's a temptation. But you need to be certain, ideally, what grade of plywood you're working with. And when I say grade, I'm not specifically talking about the facing grade of the veneered sheets on the ply. I'm talking about the types of adhesives that are being used. Yeah. So in the world of plywood, of course, there are plies that are used for the building trade that are graded for use externally, and there is plywoods that are marine grade, i.e. that are specifically for use in a wet or in a marine environment. Let's be honest. And obviously, the adhesives used to hold that wood together and to ensure that there's no egress of or less egress of moisture into that ply means that they are not really suited for laser cutting. Well, they're not suited for laser cutting.
Yeah, exactly.
So be sure to check that you're going to a supplier who is specifically telling you the properties of the wood that you have and that they are of a grade suitable for laser cutting. At Kitronik, all of our materials have a link to safety data sheets.
Yep.
And if they're suitable for laser cutting, we say so. It's not kind of implied. It's very much part of the information that's provided.
Yeah, and on the listings, and especially as well in the catalogue, there are good lists of which woods are PEFC and FSC certified as well. So that's like Forest Stewardship Council.
Right. So this is a talk we're talking now about sustainability.
Yes.
So ultimately the safety of the planet. So I mean, this is one of the advantages. So we've got pros and cons to go through, but one of the great advantages of working with ply is, yes, it's wood, and leaving trees up rather than cutting them down is probably better. But plywoods, generally speaking, the poplar and birch ply are made from highly sustainable and managed forests.
Yeah, precisely.
So you'd mentioned the markings. What were they again?
Oh, for PEFC and FSC.
Yes. So that's Forestry Stewardship.
Forestry Stewardship Council, and PEFC is Programme for the Endorsement of Forest Certification.
Well, I'm all for that.
Yeah, I'm here for it too.
So I was going to show the staining. So if we could switch to the desk cam again, and I can probably hold this in about the right place.
Demonstration camera. There we go.
Sort of in the right place anyway. and if I just lift that up, and I might need to focus it a little bit, you can just about see the hazing around the lettering on here, and that obviously is where we've vaporized the material from the top of the plywood sheet, and that has to go somewhere, so some of that settling and staining the material. But one of the advantages of plywood, of course, is that it can be sanded. If you use a fine grain sandpaper on this particular piece of birch, you would be able to remove a lot of that staining, and you get again a slightly different finish and look to this engraving. And if we then look to the edge of the material, so this was done on a lower powered sort of an older laser cutter we have in the development department here at Kitronik. It's I think it's rated about 40 or 50 watts. And as I say, it's a few years old, but it was able to cut through this birch ply with leaving a minimum of sort of charring on the edges, but you get the idea there of the sort of coloration you might get on a birch ply when cutting through it. I'll show you the cedar ply, which is a little bit more likely to leave some ashing on the cut. And then we were talking about the engraving and how dark that is. And again, with a fine grain sandpaper, we could really tidy that up. Or leave it as it is, depending on preference, I suppose.
Yeah. So I've had a good deal of success with sanding things that have been laser cut in or laser engraved in this manner. Actually, when we switch back to the forward camera,
yeah, case in point.
Right here, case in point, there was a good deal. There still is a little bit of a dark shadow, but I had a good deal of staining on this. And even though it's veneered, it's still safe to very lightly sand. So
I want to grab a bit of the thicker dye. So I grabbed this really quite thick sheet of poplar plywood, and I'm hoping it is 9mm thick. I didn't even know we did this thickness, but it's a good illustration. I don't think I can get it underneath the desk camera, but maybe I can bring it close enough with a main.
Yeah, you can see
You can see that this one, as it's so thick, is made up of actually, I think it's 5 layers.
Yeah.
Well, it's very difficult to say, but your laser cutter should be able to cut through something like this at an appropriately slow speed if your machine is in a good state of maintenance and alignment, of course, and probably if you have a longer focal length lens. But I also thought it's a good illustration of the show side with the pin knot on there, but it's probably very hard to see at home. And then the non-show side where we've got a line here and a little bit of staining, but really so little that you probably can barely notice that at home. I mean, you'd have to be very, very picky about your wood, which I think brings us nicely to how is plywood made.
Ooh, I like this. I like this. We have some lovely videos from a blog that was written a few years ago on the topic.
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hold that up and say, what do you notice about that, Emma?
I think it's a bit curved, you know.
Well, let's make it smiley rather than sad. So it's a bit but why is it curly?
Well, glad you asked, Dominic. So, when the plywood is made, it is peeled from a log.
And the log shape is round.
Yeah, it's like a giant wooden fruit winder. It's quite wonderful.
I think we do have a little video of that.
We do.
If we can bring it up. If you like how it's made type videos, looking up how plywood is made or how wood veneer is made is probably worth doing.
It's delightful. It is. Let me pop you into. There you go.
It's a meta where we go on YouTube to show you another YouTube video.
Yeah. YouTube within a YouTube. So this is a log being peeled for the purposes of producing plywood. And so it just gets clamped between those two sort of pillars there and passed gradually over a blade.
Passed gradually over a blade. Over a blade. Such a threatening.
But it's you can see it, like it's become smooth now, and that's exactly how it's produced.
Yeah.
The layers are
I mean, we're
produced.
looking at the log in the background here.
Yes, yeah.
Because obviously this machine is working on several at once, which is an efficiency, I guess, but
Yeah.
but not an efficiency of video. But as you can see, that backlog there now is looking like a nice graded piece of timber.
Mhm.
And it's not super easy to see, but it's now essentially getting smaller
Mhm.
as it's being peeled.
Yes, yeah. And that's why the
That's why it's curved.
the wood is curved, and that's why it will curve if it gets a little bit damp.
Well, as so obviously the it's moving environments. It's going from the place that it's been produced
Mhm.
to the place that it's been worked. It's
Yep.
then being moved logistically, possibly in a again salt air environment,
Yep.
like at sea,
Yep.
and then stored, and then shipped, and then stored. And as it comes from, say, our warehouse to your workshop, again, there's going to be a humidity change, and this can cause some reversion. So the best way to deal with that is to keep your woods stacked flat, so on a shelf rather than on its side.
Mhm.
And there is really no harm in having either quite a pile of it or popping some weights on top,
Yes,
maybe
yeah.
with something to stop any denting,
Yeah,
like a sheet of
exactly.
cardboard or something like that.
We-
But curling is natural.
Yeah,
Essentially,
yeah.
is what we're getting at.
We do have a blog. Again, we have loads of blogs on this. But we have a blog on how to care for your plywood. So just in case this does happen, we have some suggestions. Basically, keep away from heat, away from sunlight, keep it flat, but not on the floor because you might tread on it.
I think the footmark in your plywood is like it's pretty traditional.
Oh yeah. And if it's warped, store it concave side down. So store it. Can I have that piece of the veneer? Thank you. Store it. If I was a shelf, store it that way.
If I was a shelf.
If I was a shelf,
Yeah.
store it this way, and it'll flatten it.
Stack it up on a flat surface.
Yeah.
Give it every chance to get accustomed to your environment. Don't have wide variances of temperature if at all possible. Try and keep your humidity even.
Yes. Yeah.
Don't lean it against the radiator. These are all you're not helping the ply.
Yeah. It needs stability.
It wants to go back to its original form.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, I mean that's obviously made harder by the fact So if we're looking at some of our, I'll pull this piece here. I can't even tell what thickness that is, but who knows? If you think about that, you've got a curved piece on the surface, a curved piece on the back, and then if you take that surface piece and then rotate it 90 degrees, that's in the center. But that center piece is trying to combat that. It's trying to curve that way, I guess.
Yeah.
And these are trying to curve that way.
Yeah, exactly. It's all under tension.
For laser cutting, certainly with something as low density as poplar ply, strong magnets, flat but strong magnets on a honeycomb bed is ideal.
Yeah.
Or using clamping, or one method I've used before is to have just a long iron bar, flat bar, sit that on top.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good idea.
But the flatter the material, the better. Before you pop it in the laser, that obviously aids the maintaining the focal height below your lens.
Precisely.
Okay, so we talked about pros and cons. So we've said it's sustainable. It's certainly low cost. It's not as cheap as MDF, I suppose, but it certainly produces far less dust.
Yeah.
And like MDF can create a high level of kind of dust and particulate that will start to clog your machine up. If you've cut large amounts of MDF, then you'll be well aware of what I'm talking about. Whereas, you can cut ply all day long, and sure, you might get some resinous staining, but you're not going to get anything like the levels of dust and dirt you get from MDF.
Exactly.
It is, of course, flammable.
Yep. Yes.
So never leave a material in a laser cutter without you being in attendance. Be aware that gaps or knotting in a plywood can cause ignition from time to time. It's not unheard of. So like anything in your laser, be aware of the risk of fire. That's not really a pro though, is it? There's a great benefit of plywood.
Oh, yes.
As you can use wood glue on it.
Oh, yes. We love wood glue.
And wood glue is just a very, very simple way of joining, materials together.
Yeah.
Far easier than gluing an acrylic together, although, it's doable. But the glues used for plies are basic glues. We're talking normal Evo wood glue.
Yeah, like a PVA.
PVA.
Yeah. It's far less serious chemicals involved than in acrylic glue, so it's a much more preferable.
It's an easy material.
Yeah.
I used to have a colleague that made kind of marble run machines that were plywood kits that put together, and we'd have them on display, and a kid would come and smash them all, and he'd just pull the glue out, mend them instantly. So it is a very good and easy material to work with. And obviously, then we talked about engraving. You get all of these effects with engraving and marking. Take paint well, take stain well. It can be sanded. Cons.
Exactly.
The cons are, well, we mentioned already, of course, it's flammable. You've got variance in grade. If you're using particularly poor quality plies, then your central layers could be full of knots, which will give you some difficulties with laser cuts. So to detail the problem, you might have a sheet of material and you'd be cutting out your design on it, and you've got that set to a particular speed and power. But then as it finds a knot within the center of the material, which you can't know it's there, exactly. It's going to need a bit more push to get it through that material, and you might end up with a miscut in part of your project, which can be very annoying, as anyone with a laser will tell you. Resins and smoke, of course. Vaporizing ply creates an extract that you need to remove from the environment that you're in, and engraving it can make large volumes of smoke.
Oh yeah. Just make sure your extraction, your air filtration is.
Well, you don't need to filter as long as your extraction is good, or if you do have filtration, be aware that
it might be full of resin.
If you have dense smoke going into filtration system, it's going to use the filtration system up.
Yes, yeah.
But not as much as MDF does.
No.
And the staining that we've already mentioned. There isn't a lot more to go into, is there?
No.
I'm going to grab that little project that we said we weren't going to show.
Yeah, the elastic bands have died a little on it. But,
this has been kicking around, not literally kicked, but around Kitronik for a good number of years.
Yeah.
And the elastic bands have lasted not as long as the other pieces. But I thought, in addition to the wall art behind us, it was worth showing that project. Yeah,
it's as you can see, it's nice for that contrast. Again, I really love that contrast, but it's
well, I'm going to take one of these off because it's falling off anyway, and then
that's a good idea.
Should we get this on the
absolutely
desk camera?
Absolutely.
And I can talk about linear engrave.
Oh yes.
Oh, and then we'll finish off with living hinge, I think.
Oh yes.
So
perfect.
So this is a piece of poplar ply, 3mm, and you can see that it's a globe. Well, it's not a globe shape that I was showing you, but it's a sort of a multi-sided globe.
Some sort of 3D polygon.
And I think we're looking at Central America here and Mexico, and it's been marked onto this poplar using a line cut. So using a linear movement where the power and speed are such that it's not going all the way through the material. And you just see how clean that finish is. And I don't think that's been sanded either.
No.
It may have been, there may have been some masking put on top of that and then peeled off, but I doubt it, because that would have taken a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And who has that amount of time? Not me, that's for sure. And you can see the edges there.
Yeah,
the coloration's really fine. You know, I'm saying fine, I don't mean fine as in detailed, I mean adequate.
Yeah, it's not charred much at all, really. That's quite
So we bring up that little video of the living hinge?
Oh yeah, absolutely we can.
I'm going to finish on this because, no pun intended, this demonstrates the flexibility of plywood, both literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Can we give credit for this GIF? We don't know who.
Yeah.
We don't know who made the GIF. Emma's going to find out. Yeah. But with the right sorts of patterns, and these patterns can be found by Googling living hinge patterns, and I think there are even some generators. Boxes.py probably has one that will allow you to cut through your plywood sheet in such a way that there is a significant amount of flex available in it. We got this GIF from fabacademy.com, basically.
Yeah. Exactly.
They may well have got it from somebody else. It might not be theirs. Who knows? I'm sure they're not watching. But
if you are, hello.
Yeah, I think that concludes Ply, unless there's any questions have appeared, and I don't think so.
No, just a couple of my friends in the comments.
Well,
hello there.
You know, we are going to try and do these materials live streams every month on the last Thursday of every month. And we haven't picked a topic for next month.
No.
But I think we might do polypropylene.
Oh, go on then.
Polypropylene.
Polypropylene is great fun.
It's great fun. So that's what we'll be doing next month. So
amazing.
On that note, I think we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah. Well, it was lovely streaming with you again.
Yes. No, I'm sure. Are we going to put the links to those blogs in the doobly-doo?
In the comment, not the comments, the description.
In the description.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Until next month, then thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Emma.
Oh, hello.
Oh, wait. What's the main difference between the three wood choices? Thank you, Laura. What is the main difference? Well, really, it's preference.
It is preference. Birch tends to be a little bit heavy.
Yeah, so I suppose we could go into that in more detail. So I'm holding up a piece of poplar ply here, and the reason I'm going to mention this is so I make stuff from time to time, but really what I do is I mend and service laser cutters, and I carry poplar ply in my toolbox to use on services because it is so predictably the same. It's the consistency and density of it is, from sheet to sheet, I have found very little variance, and that's probably because it's made from poplar trees. A poplar tree is a very tall tree. It grows up in about 6 years or 7 years or so, very fast growing, and it makes this very pale, not especially dense, very versatile wood. So if you're looking to prototype or make something that doesn't need to be super strong, then poplar is a good choice, I think. It cuts on a laser cutter like on a machine that's in good maintenance. It cuts like butter very quickly, minimal staining. Obviously, the faster you can move and cut through a piece of material on a laser cutter, the less staining and burning you're going to, say, I don't mean burning, but marking you're going to have of the material. Whereas if we move on to something like birch, and I'm going to use it. I mean, obviously this is not a birch quality that we have here. This is actually an oak veneer on birch, on a birch backing.
Yeah, that's I think a C or a BB grade probably.
I think this is C. I think this is C grade back here. But the point is this reverse sheet here probably illustrates quite well what you're getting when we're getting into birch. So if you need a stronger ply, then Baltic birch, it is much stronger. Well, not much stronger, but significantly stronger than poplar plywood. It gives you
It's denser, isn't
It's
it?
denser, yeah. It has a greater density to it. Again, you know, like the finish of a piece of ply. And I'll pull out one of the. We've got a high grade. So this is, just a beautiful piece of wood, really. But this is still a ply, and this is an extremely high grade. And I'm feeling that it's been sanded to a very high grit, and so it's a very woody wood.
Yeah.
To go in the quote book, isn't it? But it, as we mentioned, much denser, much more likely to have larger knots in the internal layers, stronger and just slightly darker. Then the Seba, I mean, really, I've never really used Seba pickers.
It's extremely light and airy for a wood.
It's a much more orangey coloured wood. I'm just going to hold that up next to the ply, and you can see that they have quite different coloration. But it does have a very fine and long grain on the Seba, and this is this piece is only 2 millimeters thick, so you can see, like, you know, it's very flexible, the Seba. But as we mentioned, when engraving Seba, we're getting a much darker finish on the engraving.
Yeah, I think we
edging than on.
We've theorized last time we spoke about Seba, didn't we? That the reason it's darker is possibly because there's more air.
There's more acid. It's a less dense. It's a less dense wood. So just like balsa is, flakier and softer.
Yeah.
Seba is. Wow, I'm going to make myself look a fool. Is like a balsa. That's what I'm going to say.
Well, Seba is probably, in terms of density, it probably least dense to most dense is Seba, poplar,
birch.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably the main difference.
Oh, and seeing as we're on this topic,
I
did bring a piece of bamboo.
Oh yeah.
And of course, like, the thing to note is, like, this is not a plywood. This is bamboo, essentially stacked together, compressed, and I assume glued.
Yeah.
But we're not doing bamboo today, so we're not going to go into depth in that one. But so that's a piece of bamboo, but not a ply. It's a it has another name. It says pressed. It's pressed wood. Yeah,
like a composite, I guess.
I don't know.
It's
on that note, there we go.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Laura.
Seba, I should say, is spelt Ceiba.
Yes, Ceiba.
Seba.
Yes.
And I'll Seba you next month.
Yes. Well, see you guys next month. It was lovely streaming with you again. And if you have any more questions afterwards, feel free to leave them in the comments. We will get back to you on that. You can contact us on other social medias, Instagram. We're on TikTok now. Don't worry, we're not dancing.
I'm not dancing
yet.
I would say that if people have specific topics within a material or something that, you know, we can get advance notice on, or questions, and then we can help prepare. Because otherwise they're coming pretty much off the top. But we're hoping, you know, as time goes on, we'll find our groove.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next month. There will be another tech talk that isn't materials in the month in between as well.
Yeah, in the time in between.
Yeah. So, yeah, perfect. See you all next time. Bye.